As a fan of both vampire and post-apocalyptic fiction, The Last Ones, an upcoming release from Humanoids, is right up my street. Especially since it brings together David Munoz on words and Manuel Garcia on art. Following a world-changing cataclysm, the sky has been blotted out by a blanket of dust. But the real problem is that this means it's dinner time for vampires. No longer in fear of the sun, the undead are now the dominant species on the planet, and humans are a dwindling resource. The story follows a man named Niall and a woman named Elena as they struggle to protect a small group of children long enough to find somewhere safe. But the odds are against them, and Niall is a lot more than what he seems. What do you think of this one, Al?
Look, I liked it. I'm going to give it a borrow rather than a buy because I did enjoy it, but I felt there were a couple of places that it wasn't all that I hoped it would be.
Sure.
I think the strongest element of it is probably the character of Niall.
Yes.
It's really his story, even though we don't start with him. We start with Elena and the children, but then he comes in and rescues them, and then I'm going to go ahead and say it does turn out that he's a vampire.
It's very obvious.
You find that out very early on. You would have guessed it anyway. So we see, how he became a vampire, everything, mostly through flashbacks.
Yep.
We see his journey and his struggle, and that's great, but I felt like in places the cast of characters could have been a bit more fleshed out.
Sure.
Elena is a good character, but she's really the same person at the end that she is at the start. A bit tougher.
Yeah,
maybe
definitely.
a little less trusting.
Yep.
But she's essentially, we don't get any surprises about her. There aren't really any surprises about any of the characters other than Niall and one of the children. Won't go into that one, but creepy.
Munoz likes creepy children.
He does.
That's
like
what it just comes
children.
down to.
We had whispers in the walls.
Yep,
and we got
creepy
this.
children.
He likes scary children.
Yeah.
So I mean, the cast of characters, the big bad that sort of appears. He, yes, he's got a grand, super evil plan. But he, as a character, was a little bit bland.
Sure.
He could have been more, more imposing, be a bit grander. Yep. I don't know. Maybe that's the point. Maybe I've missed the point there, and it is about this bleak thing, and he's not this moustache twirling villain. He's just a regular guy who happens to be a vampire.
Sure.
I don't know if that's what it is. But so that I felt was a little bit of a letdown.
Yep.
But beyond that, I also felt like maybe there wasn't enough vampiriness in this. I mean, you look to Niall's first appearance when he just shows up hacking through vampires, throwing spears through heads.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
It is.
And there's really not much of that in this book. There's not much combat, there's not much super vampiness happening that we see. And that, I felt like, if we're in this world where everything's gone to hell, and that's understood, and again, maybe I've missed the point, but I would have liked to see, since we're already doing flashbacks, show me a flashback just after the fall, when vampires first realise that they just have free run of the henhouse now. Let's just see this moment when the vampires were running wild, tearing down society and eating everyone. I would have liked to see that. That would have given texture to what we see later, and the intense fear that people have would have been more justified. Again, entirely possible I'm missing the point, and that creeping dread is more what it's about. But like I said, I in no way didn't like this. It's a good read, it's a solid read with good characters, it's a good journey. The plot all makes complete sense. You go through it, nothing in it made me go, what? No, but everything works.
Yeah.
I just felt like it could have been a bit stronger. It could have just upped the dosage a little bit.
See, I'm giving this one a buy. I'm not usually a fan of survivalist horror.
Sure.
I'm
usually because it has zombies.
Usually it has zombies, and we all know my thoughts on zombies.
Yeah.
But it's that kind of bleak, lack of hope, drudgery of survivalist horror that I just, after a while, it's like, oh, somebody crack a smile. Now, the weird thing is, The Last Ones has that.
It is quite bleak.
It's very bleak. It is a survivalist road movie, basically.
Yeah.
But it didn't get to me like other ones have. I don't know whether it's because the pacing of this is actually really, despite the fact that it seems to be going at a very slow pace, a lot is happening because of a really clever use of the flashbacks.
Sure.
Just as things kind of quieten down, and then maybe, they're camping or anything, you get a flashback and you get to see, and you get to see Niall in his fully fledged vampirism craziness. As far as seeing that kind of the vamps running wild, I'm actually really glad I didn't. There is a lot of that.
Yeah,
we see that. You know, there is a lot of vampire stories where you see the blood and the bodies ripped and they've gone crazy. And it's actually really nice to have a story which goes, yep, that all happened, but that's not the point.
You guys know what vampires are.
Exactly.
We don't
They're
need
monsters.
to ram that down your throat.
Yeah, that's not the point. The point is this small group of people trying to go from point A to point B and not die in the meantime. The other thing I loved is it does have a creeping dread. Humanoids is so good at fostering this kind of uneasy,
something's bad is coming.
Gonna happen and I don't like it and it's freaking me out, which I really enjoy from my horror. I don't need things jumping out. I don't need monsters ripping people in front of me. What I like is that kind of something's coming. Something is coming.
I know it is.
I know it is.
Feel it.
And that's what I really love about this. I also really love the artwork in this. We're talking about an Arctic winter that is white and grey. That's it.
And
that's
some more
really
white.
it. Some more white and a little bit more grey.
The occasional splashes of red.
It doesn't feel monotonous.
No, that's true.
The difference between the Arctic tundra while they're out in the kind of countryside, and then when they actually find a base where they find the architecture in the snow is so beautifully different. It keeps you going. And then again, you've got the flashbacks, which are, funnily enough, in a warmer palette, even though it's about the vampires.
But you may be in a warmer palette seeing, a vampire bursting into flame.
Exactly.
And yeah, Garcia does do a fantastic job.
So good.
Certainly got no bones about that.
I loved all of that. And the vampires themselves, when they do show up and you do catch a glimpse of them, they are the thing of nightmares. They are scary monsters. There is no twinkling here. They are scary, scary monsters. So, I mean, overall, for a survivalist horror story to actually get to me where I'm really intrigued, I sat down and I read that all in one hit, and it's a pretty hefty volume.
Yeah, no, I went through it in one.
Yeah, that's a big thing for me, because 9 times out of 10, nah, I'm done within about a quarter, and I can't do it anymore. This kept me intrigued. I wanted to know what was going to happen, and even though it, you do have a bit of a lack of hope, and it's a little bit kind of, no one's coming out of this alive. I still couldn't help but feel maybe someone will. I know they won't, but maybe someone will. So overall, that's why I really love this, and that's why I've given it a buy, because it's a title which I wouldn't necessarily like, but I think this was really well executed. So it's definitely one to keep an eye out for at the end of July.